My dad's new girlfriend tormented my 5-year-old sister with grief therapy and burned her most precious possession after mom's tragic death. But when I started digging into her past, I uncovered something so sinister that it destroyed her entire life. I was 14 when I became a mom to a 5-year-old girl, and that 5-year-old girl was my sister Lily, because our actual mom died after a tree fell and crushed her to death. And I never had time to grieve, because I was the oldest, which meant I had to be the strong one. So while my sister spent the funeral clutching Mr. Buttons, her teddy bear, whispering that mommy lives inside him now, I made sure everyone was okay. Not even 5 months had passed before Dad brought Diane home. She works as a social worker, he explained, his hand on her lower back. She understands what we're going through. Diane studied our living room like a realtor calculating square footage. Her eyes lingered on Lily, still gripping Mr. Buttons, with something cold beneath her sympathetic smile. Poor baby, she cooed, yanking the bear from Lily's hands to examine it. My sister's whimper made my chest tight. So young to lose her mother. The changes started immediately. Mom's photos disappeared first, because they were too painful for the healing process. When Lily cried, seeing blank walls where Mom smiled, Diane grabbed her shoulders hard. You can't trick me. I know you're trying to make me feel bad, but you have to let it go. I said nothing, helped pack Mom's belongings while fury built inside me. I knew the alternative meant more punishment from Diane. You're so mature, Dad kept saying, blind to Diane's grip on Lily. Diane says you're remarkably well adjusted. Diane's grief exercises were torture disguised as therapy. She'd lock Lily in her room for quiet reflection when she cried for Mom, force-fed her when she wouldn't eat, holding her jaw open. Grieving doesn't mean starving, she'd say sweetly while Lily gagged. Once, I caught her ripping Mr. Buttons from Lily's sleeping arms, making her earn him back by reciting, Diane is helping me heal 10 times perfectly. I maintained my perfect daughter act, but spent nights holding Lily while she shook. Why does Diane hurt me? She'd whisper. Try to be good for Daddy, I'd lie, hating myself. She's trying to help. But when Diane started making Lily stand in the corner for excessive crying, I knew this wasn't help. This was something else. Dad noticed nothing, too busy planning his wedding, until Mom's birthday approached. She would have been 39. Every year, she'd take Lily to the cemetery where her parents were buried, letting her pick flowers and tell stories. I want to take Lily this year, I told Dad at breakfast. Continue the tradition. Diane's coffee mug paused midway to her lips. Actually, I've scheduled Lily with Dr. Morrison that afternoon. Intensive therapy for her unhealthy attachments. Her smile was sharp. The teddy bear obsession ends today. The cemetery helps her feel connected. Your mother is dead, Diane snapped at me, and your sister's delusions are pathological. Diane knows best, Dad murmured, not meeting my eyes. I tried once more. Please, it's one afternoon. Diane stood, leaning close. I'm only doing this because I love you. Don't make me push harder. The threat was clear. That afternoon, I came home to Lily's risks being held by Diane. When I ran out, her face was so swollen from crying that I could barely even see her eyes. Give me Mr. Buttons, she repeated over and over. That's when I heard it, something burning. I looked behind them and saw a small homemade fire on the ground, made up of kindlewood. Therapeutic release ceremony, she announced, her voice dripping with false compassion. Lily needs to let go. Please, me and Lily whispered, clutching Mr. Buttons tighter. He has mommy inside. Diane's face twitched. That's exactly why he has to go. Diane ripped Mr. Buttons from Lily's arms. My sister lunged forward, desperate, and Diane shoved her backwards, hard. Lily hit the ground, grass staining her dress. She was screaming, not crying, but screaming like something inside her was being torn apart. Watch carefully, Diane said, holding Mr. Buttons over the flames. This is what healing looks like. Stuffing curled and blackened. Lily's scream cut off mid-breath, like someone had pressed mute on her voice. She stared at the fire, mouth open, no sound coming out. 3 days later, she still hadn't spoken, hadn't eaten. Diane's response was to shake her. Stop the dramatics. Slap her face. Speak when spoken to. That morning, I found Diane force-feeding Lily breakfast, fingers bruising her cheeks. Swallow, or you'll sit here all day. That's when I exploded. You're torturing her. You're not healing anyone. You're erasing Mom to steal her life. The slap came fast. Dad grabbed my arms while Diane locked me in my room. I kicked until my feet bled, then climbed out the window. Found Lily in her room, practically catatonic. Carried her to Dad's car, drove without a license to Aunt Sarah's. I didn't realize it yet, but Aunt Sarah was ready to tell me something that would change everything. Sarah opened the door before I could knock, her face pale. She pulled us inside quickly, checking the street behind us. Her hands shook as she locked the deadbolt. I carried Lily to the couch while Sarah grabbed blankets. My sister hadn't moved or spoken since I'd pulled her from that room. Her eyes stayed fixed on nothing, like she was watching something far away that only she could see. Sarah knelt beside us, touching Lily's forehead gently. Then she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear mixed with something else. Recognition. She walked to her bedroom and returned carrying a wooden box, the kind Mom used to keep important papers in. Sarah's fingers trembled as she opened it. My phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket. I pulled it out to see message after message from Diane. The first one sounded concerned, then worried. By the 10th message, they'd turned threatening. She mentioned kidnapping charges, said Dad was calling the police, claimed I was having a mental breakdown. I turned the phone to silent and shoved it back in my pocket. Sarah pulled out a small leather journal. Mom's handwriting covered the pages. My chest tightened seeing those familiar loops and curves. The entry was dated 3 weeks before Mom died. Sarah pointed to a specific paragraph, and I read it while Lily rocked slightly beside me, still silent. Diane knows about the life insurance. She asked about it during her home hospice visits last year. Why would my hospice worker need to know about our finances? The landline rang. Sarah answered and immediately put it on speaker. Dad's voice filled the room, but the words weren't his. They sounded rehearsed, like someone was feeding him lines. He demanded we return home immediately, said we needed to respect therapeutic boundaries, used phrases I'd never heard him say before, clinical terms that Diane always threw around. The doorbell rang while Dad was still talking. Sarah peeked through the curtain and motioned for me to stay quiet. Through the thin walls, I heard a woman's voice. Martha from next door, carrying what smelled like soup. Sarah let her in, and Martha set the pot on the counter. She mentioned she'd been a nurse before retiring, said she'd helped treat Mom's anxiety attacks during her recovery, the attacks that started when Diane became her hospice worker. I flipped through more journal pages while Martha talked. Mom had documented everything, every time Diane accessed her medical files without permission. Even after Mom went into remission and didn't need hospice care anymore, Lily's hand twitched beside me, the first movement she'd made in hours. Heavy knocking interrupted us. Not normal knocking, pounding. Diane's voice carried through the door, sickeningly sweet but but with an edge underneath. She said she was there for the children's well-being, that she had Dad with her. Sarah motioned for us to stay still. I crept to the peephole and looked out. Diane stood there with Dad behind her, but what made my stomach turn was watching her literally move his arm. She lifted it and placed it against the door to knock again, like he was a puppet. Sarah grabbed her phone and called someone named Tom. Her brother, she explained quickly. A lawyer. She put him on speaker too, and his voice was calm but firm. He told us to document everything, record if possible. Sarah had an old camcorder in her closet. I grabbed it and started filming through the peephole as Diane's demands grew louder. Her mask was slipping. The sweet social worker voice cracked, showing something uglier underneath. That's when Lily moved. Really moved. Diane screamed through the door that she knew what was best for her, and Lily's hand shot out and grabbed mine, squeezed it. The first real response since watching Mr. Buttons burn. I kept filming while flipping through more journal pages. Mom had written about other patients. 3 other women who'd recovered from cancer, just like her. All young mothers. All died in accidents after Diane was assigned to them. Outside, Dad started crying. Real tears, not the blank expression he'd worn for months. He begged to see us, his voice breaking, but Diane grabbed his arm and pulled him away from the door. Through the peephole, I watched her face twist with frustration. They left, but I knew they'd be back. The next morning brought new problems. My best friend Emma texted that Diane had shown up at her house. Told Emma's parents I was having a psychotic break. Said I was dangerous and needed help. I scrolled through my old messages with Mom and found one I'd forgotten about. Sent 2 days before the tree fell. If something happens to me, don't let Diane near Lily. She keeps asking about that damaged tree in the yard. Sarah showed me her laptop. The neighborhood Facebook group was lighting up. Diane had posted about a missing troubled teen. Used my school photo. People were commenting with concern and promises to watch for me. My phone rang. Ms. Chen from school. Sarah answered and explained the situation briefly. Ms. Chen said Diane had called the school too. Told them I was dangerously unstable and shouldn't be approached if spotted. We needed help, but Diane had already poisoned the well. Sarah tried calling Carl, the HOA president, but he dismissed her concerns. Diane volunteered at the community center's grief support group. Everyone thought she was wonderful. I couldn't stay trapped in Sarah's house. While she and Martha watched Lily, I snuck out the back and made my way to the library. Kept my hood up and head down. The computers were in the back corner. I searched for Diane's name and found her LinkedIn profile. 4 different home health agencies in 5 years. Each job ended right after a patient died. Mrs. Park, the librarian, appeared beside me. She'd known Mom since they were kids. Without saying anything, she slid a stack of printed articles across the desk. Obituaries. All young mothers who'd struck cancer. All died in accidents. All had the same hospice worker. Back at Sarah's, her book club friends stopped by. They mentioned seeing Diane at the grocery store, asking questions about me, specifically about my history of lying, planting seeds of doubt. I started documenting everything in Mom's journal margins. Diane's car circled the block every 2 hours. Same route, same speed, like she was stalking us. Martha sat with us that evening. Her hands shook as she told us about her daughter. Died last year when her stairs collapsed, right after going into remission from breast cancer. Diane had been her hospice nurse too. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad this time. His number, but not his words, begging me to come home, saying Diane could help Lily if I stopped interfering. Using emotional manipulation I recognized from Diane's playbook. Martha offered to watch Lily the next day so I could meet Emma. Try to do damage control before Diane turned everyone against us. We agreed on McDonald's, public but busy enough to blend in. Emma looked nervous when I arrived. She kept glancing around like someone might be watching. Then she told me why. Diane had offered her mom free grief counseling. The catch? Emma had to report if she saw me. Tell Diane where I was. Emma chose our friendship over Diane's bribes, but it showed how far Diane's reach extended, how she was building a network to hunt us down. I was halfway through my fries when Diane walked in. She carried a stack of flyers with my school photo plastered across them. The word missing screamed in bold letters above my face. My stomach dropped as I watched her approach the counter, showing the flyer to the teenage cashier. I ducked down in the booth, but Emma acted fast. She stood up and walked directly to Diane, blocking her path to our table. Emma's voice carried across the restaurant as she explained she was meeting her boyfriend, not me. She even pointed toward the opposite corner of the restaurant. Diane's eyes narrowed, but she moved in that direction. I slipped out of my seat and headed for the bathroom, keeping my head down. Behind me, I heard Emma loudly complaining about being questioned when she was just trying to eat lunch. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and tried to think. Through the thin walls, I could hear Diane's voice getting more insistent. She was describing me to customers now, asking if they'd seen me. The bathroom door opened. Footsteps approached my stall. I held my breath. A knock came, but not on my door. The stall next to mine. Then a whispered voice, not Diane's. A young man's voice with a slight accent. He said his name was Jose, that he worked in the kitchen. His mother had a hospice worker just like Diane. She died falling downstairs that had been perfectly fine the day before. Jose slipped something under the stall divider. A piece of paper with a sketch of the restaurant's layout. He'd marked a back exit through the kitchen. He said Diane was still at the front, but moving systematically through the dining area. I waited until Jose left, then made my move. The kitchen was chaos. Steam, sizzling grills, orders being shouted. Jose caught my eye and nodded toward a door marked employees only. I slipped through it into an alley behind the restaurant. Emma met me at Sarah's back gate 20 minutes later. She'd stayed at McDonald's long enough to watch Diane leave, frustrated and empty-handed. Emma handed me one of the flyers Diane had been distributing. Below my photo, it listed symptoms of a mental health crisis and urged people to call Diane's cell number immediately if they spotted me. Inside, Sarah was on the phone with her brother Tom. He was reviewing Mom's journal, and his voice through the speaker sounded increasingly concerned. He kept mentioning documented patterns and premeditation indicators. Tom asked me to photograph specific pages from Mom's journal, the ones where she'd written about Diane's strange interest in our property, how Diane had repeatedly asked about the large oak tree in our yard, commenting on its age and condition, how she'd suggested having it checked by an arborist, even offered to arrange it herself. I found the entries and took pictures with Sarah's phone. In one, Mom had written about Diane bringing a man to look at the tree without asking permission first. Mom had been unsettled by how much time they spent examining it, taking measurements, discussing angles. Sarah pulled out a folder of her own, police reports and insurance documents. She'd been keeping track of things since Mom died. The tree that culled Mom had been evaluated by a professional arborist just 6 months before it fell. It was declared healthy and stable. No rot, no disease, no structural weakness. Tom asked us to check if any neighbors had security cameras that might have captured footage from around the time time mom died. Martha immediately volunteered to ask around. She knew everyone on the block and which houses had cameras. While Martha made calls, I sat with Lily. She was still silent, but her eyes tracked movement now. When I mentioned mom, her hand tightened around mine. Progress, even if small. The doorbell rang. We all froze. Sarah checked the peephole, then relaxed. It was a police officer, but not because of Diane. One of the neighbors had called about a suspicious car circling the block. The officer was just following up. Sarah invited him in and explained our situation carefully. The officer listened, took notes, but said without concrete evidence of a crime, there wasn't much he could do. Diane hadn't technically threatened us. Being concerned about missing children wasn't illegal. After he left, Martha returned with news. The Hendersons 3 houses down had a security system that covered part of the street. They'd saved footage from the week mom died because their car had been vandalized around the same time. Martha had convinced them to let us review it. We gathered around Sarah's laptop as she loaded the files from a USB drive. The footage was grainy but clear enough. We fast-forwarded through days of normal neighborhood activity. Then we found it. 3 nights before mom died, at 2:17 a.m., a car pulled up to our house. 2 figures got out. Even in the poor light, Diane's distinctive walk was recognizable. The other figure was a man carrying what looked like tools. They went directly to the oak tree. The footage showed them there for nearly an hour, the man working on something at the base of the trunk while Diane held a flashlight. They left just before 3:30 a.m. Tom's voice through the phone was sharp with excitement. This was evidence. Real, documented evidence. He told us to save multiple copies immediately. I thought about confronting Diane with what we'd found, but Tom advised against it. We needed more. One video wasn't enough to prove murder. We needed to establish a pattern. Over the next 2 days, Martha became our investigator. She reached out to her grief support group contacts, particularly those who'd lost family members under suspicious circumstances. 3 women agreed to meet with us. Carol arrived first. Her daughter had died falling down basement stairs that Carol insisted were in perfect condition. The second woman, Linda, lost her daughter when a bookshelf toppled over, crushing her. The third, Patricia, spoke about her daughter's death from a gas leak that investigators called unusual but not impossible. All 3 women had one thing in common. Diane had been their daughter's hospice worker during cancer treatment. All 3 deaths occurred within months of remission. All 3 involved home accidents that seemed preventable. Carol had kept everything. Like mom, her daughter had been suspicious of Diane. She'd saved emails where Diane asked detailed questions about their home's layout, about daily routines, about whether they had security systems or nosy neighbors. We spent hours comparing notes. The pattern was clear. Diane targeted young mothers with good life insurance policies. She gathered information during legitimate hospice visits, then used that knowledge later, always making the deaths look accidental. Emma's mom called Sarah's house. She'd reconsidered Diane's offer of free grief counseling and now found it suspicious. Why would Diane offer free services to a family that hadn't experienced loss, unless she was trying to buy Emma's cooperation? I decided to document everything online. Tom helped me set up an anonymous blog where I posted mom's journal entries about Diane. Within hours, comments started appearing. Other families with similar experiences. Not all resulted in death, but many reported Diane's inappropriate interest in their homes, their schedules, their insurance policies. One commenter mentioned seeing Diane at estate sales, specifically looking for homes where the owner had died. She'd ask real estate agents about the circumstances of death, claiming professional interest in helping grieving families. Dad texted again. This time, the message was more urgent. Diane needed me to sign some papers, something about emergency intervention for Lily. The deadline was tomorrow at 5 p.m. If I didn't comply, she'd have to take official action. Tom explained what this meant. Diane was trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. If successful, she'd gain legal control over both Lily and me. The papers Dad mentioned were probably commitment forms. We needed Dad to see the truth, but Diane had him completely under her control. Every time we'd tried reaching out, she'd intercepted. We needed a different approach. Patricia had an idea. Her daughter's widower had eventually seen through the woman who'd pursued him after his wife's death. It took time and evidence, but he'd broken free from the manipulation. He now ran a support group for people who'd been in similar situations. She called him, and he agreed to reach out to Dad, not mentioning us, just inviting him to a grief support meeting, a chance to talk with other widowers who understood loss. Meanwhile, Nicole, who'd been Martha's daughter's best friend, was using her nursing school connections to research Diane's employment history. She found something disturbing. Diane had been flagged at 2 previous agencies for boundary violations, but nothing severe enough to lose her license. The violations included accessing patient files after discharge, showing up at homes uninvited, and maintaining contact with widowers after her professional relationship ended. Each time, she'd moved to a new agency before formal complaints could be filed. Nicole also discovered Diane had researched accidental death liability extensively. She'd attended seminars on home safety assessments, but from a legal perspective, understanding how accidents were investigated, what made them seem suspicious versus natural. Sarah received a call from her boss. Diane had shown up at her workplace, claiming Sarah was harboring runaway children. She'd made such a scene that security had to escort her out. Her mask was slipping more each day. That evening, we sat down to plan our next move. We had evidence, witness testimonies, and a clear pattern of behavior, but we needed something more concrete, something that would force authorities to act. Martha suggested we reach out to the families from Diane's past agencies. If we could establish she'd done this before mom, it would strengthen our case significantly. Tom agreed to help track down contact information through legal channels. Lily suddenly spoke. Just one word. Mommy. The first word she'd said since the fire. We all froze. Then I pulled her into my arms. She whispered it again, then added, hurt. I asked if she meant Diane hurt mommy. Lily nodded, then pressed her face into my shoulder. It wasn't much, but it was progress. She was coming back to us. The blog exploded overnight. Someone had shared it on a nursing forum, and medical professionals were weighing in. Several mentioned knowing colleagues who'd been flagged for similar boundary violations. The pattern was more common than we'd thought, though rarely escalated to murder. Dad's sister Patricia called Sarah. She'd been trying to reach her brother but couldn't get through. She was worried. He hadn't sounded like himself in months. Sarah carefully explained what was happening, and Patricia immediately drove down from 2 hours away. When Patricia saw the evidence we'd compiled, she broke down. She'd noticed changes in her brother, but attributed them to grief. The way he parroted Diane's phrases, how he'd stopped mentioning mom entirely, how he seemed disconnected from his own children. Patricia had a key to our house from before mom died. She offered to go there when Diane was at work, to look for anything that might help. Tom advised against it. Too risky. But Patricia was determined to help her brother. The next morning, Diane Diane escalated. She arrived at Sarah's house with 2 security guards from a private mental health facility. She had paperwork claiming I was a danger to myself and others. The guards looked uncomfortable but said they had orders. Tom was already on his way, but we needed to stall. Sarah refused to let them in without seeing proper authorization. Diane produced documents, but Sarah noticed they weren't properly notarized. The date was wrong, the seal was smudged. Diane had forged them. The security guards examined the papers more closely. One made a phone call to verify. Within minutes, they were apologizing to Sarah and leaving. Diane's face went from confident to furious to something like panic. She tried to push past Sarah into the house, screaming about saving those poor children from a delusional teenager. Martha's husband appeared from next door, phone already recording. Other neighbors came out to watch. Diane was making a scene she couldn't control. That's when Dad arrived with Patricia. For the first time in months, he looked confused instead of blindly obedient. Patricia had been talking to him during the drive, showing him the blog on her phone, sharing her concerns. Diane immediately went to him, trying to take control, but with Patricia there, supporting him, Dad resisted. He asked to see his daughters. Diane tried to redirect him, but he insisted. The look on Diane's face when Dad walked past her into Sarah's house was something I'll never forget. Pure rage masked by a cracking smile. She knew she was losing control. Inside, Dad saw Lily clinging to me, saw the evidence spread across Sarah's dining table, saw Mom's journal open to the entry about the tree. His face crumbled as he began to understand. Tom arrived and immediately took charge. He advised Diane to leave the property. She refused, claiming she had a right to ensure the children's safety. Tom pointed out that she had no legal standing and had just attempted to use forged documents. Diane's composure finally shattered completely. She screamed that we were all ungrateful, that she'd tried to help our pathetic family, that Mom was weak and had given up anyway. The words poured out, venomous and revealing. Martha's husband was still recording. Every word Diane said was being captured. Her admission that Mom was weak, her fury at being rejected, her entitled belief that she deserved our family. Patricia called 911, reporting a disturbance. Diane tried to leave, but her car was blocked in by the security vehicle she'd hired. She was trapped by her own escalation. When the police arrived, they found a scene of chaos. Diane ranting about ungrateful children, forged documents scattered on the ground, multiple witnesses with recording devices. They took everyone's statements, reviewed the forged paperwork, and ultimately arrested Diane for attempted fraud and disturbing the peace. It wasn't murder charges, but it was a start. Tom said the arrest would allow investigators to dig deeper into Diane's past. With proper warrants, they could access her employment records, financial history, and connections to the mysterious man in the security footage. Dad broke down completely that night. The full weight of what he'd allowed to happen crashed over him. He held Lily and sobbed, apologizing over and over. Lily finally spoke again, telling him it was okay, that Diane had tricked him. Patricia stayed with us, helping Dad process everything. She'd brought photo albums from her house, pictures of Mom that Diane had made Dad throw away. We spent hours looking through them, remembering, healing. The investigation moved quickly once it started. Other families came forward with complaints about Diane. The man in the security footage was identified as someone Diane had hired for home maintenance multiple times. He was already in custody on unrelated charges and seemed willing to talk for a deal. 2 weeks after Diane's arrest, we learned she'd been charged with 2 counts of murder, Mom and Martha's daughter. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. The security footage, the pattern of behavior, the forged documents showing her willingness to break laws. Dad started therapy with the widowers support group Patricia had found. He had a long road ahead, but he was trying. He moved back in with Patricia temporarily, recognizing he wasn't ready to care for us alone yet. Lily slowly returned to herself. Not the same as before. She'd never be that carefree 5-year-old again, but she was talking, eating, even laughing occasionally. We got her a new teddy bear, and while she loved it, she understood it was just a bear. The blog became a resource for families dealing with predatory caregivers. Tom helped me transfer it to a proper website with resources and warning signs. We received messages from around the country, people who'd experienced similar violations of trust during vulnerable times. Diane's trial was months away, but we were ready. We had evidence, witnesses, and a community of survivors who understood that evil sometimes comes disguised as help, that predators often choose careers that give them access to vulnerable people. I returned to school eventually, though everything felt different. My teachers were understanding, my real friends supportive. Emma and I grew closer through the ordeal. She'd chosen truth over comfort, and I'd never forget that. Some nights I still woke up thinking I heard Diane's voice, that sickeningly sweet tone hiding cruelty. But then I'd check on Lily, sleeping peacefully with her new bear, and remember that we'd won. We'd protected each other when the adults who should have protected us had failed. Mom's tree was gone, but we planted a new one in the backyard at Sarah's house, a small maple that would grow strong and tall. Lily insisted on helping, patting the soil down with her small hands. She looked up at me when we finished and smiled, a real smile, not the forced ones from Diane's time. We'd survived, we'd exposed the truth, and while we'd never get Mom back, we'd made sure Diane couldn't destroy another family.